today's video, what we're going to talk about is a couple of different kinds of reloads that you can do for the AR platform. Now, before I go into it, we're going to go ahead and cover a couple of safety considerations. Obviously, anytime you handle any firearm, you want to make sure that weapon is unloaded, especially when you're doing practice, right? Because you don't want to shoot anything that you don't intend to shoot. So we'll cover that real quick first, right? So we have our AR right here. First thing we're going to do is place the weapon on safe. Once we've done that, then we're going to go ahead and we will remove the source of ammunition from the rifle. In this case being a magazine, right? We're going to check that for clear, set that off to the side. So now that we've cleared our magazine from the rifle, we're going to go ahead and check our chamber and our feedway. We're going to pull the charging handle back, lock our bolt to the rear, push the charging handle forward, and we're going to check inside our chamber and our feedway, right? So check those, they both look good. So I'm going to go ahead, pull the charging handle back, seat it forward, throw the mag back in the gun. Another thing we want to check, if we're doing anything that involves magazines that you have at any point loaded with live ammunition, you also want to check those magazines, just like we checked this one, right? So go ahead and pull them out of your magazine pouch, look at them, make sure you got nothing but the follower in there. If you're going to use more than one, or if you have a couple next to each other, make sure that neither of them are loaded with live ammo, so you don't actually grab one that you don't want to. Okay, so now that that administrative stuff is out of the way, let's go ahead and get into the bulk of the video, talking about reloads. So for the purpose of this video, I'm going to cover two different types of reloads. Those reloads being tactical reloads with retention and speed reloads, or emergency reloads as some people call them. Now I'm not going to get too nitpicky on our nomenclature here, because really for all intents and purposes, if anyone tells you anything different about how to do these, that's just their individual method of doing it. And while everyone likes to argue that their method is the only way of doing something, that's not necessarily true. Because most of the time, there's more than one way to skin a cat. And while there aren't a million ways while doing this, there are more than one ways in order to get this done. So before we get into this too far, we're going to go ahead and define what our two different types of reloads are. So our tactical reloads with retention are going to be reloads in which we can step out of the fight for a minute, get more ammunition in our gun, and keep shooting. Our magazine hasn't run dry at this point. We're just doing this as more of an administrative action, so that way we can have a full 30 rounds on tap, 31 including the reload, if we need to get back into the fight, right? The other kind of reload that we're going to talk about is an emergency reload. When you have run the gun dry, you need to get it back on target as quickly as possible. So, as I said before, different people define these in different ways. These are just the ways that I do them. These are the ways that I practice them, and other people have their other methods. We're not going to get into that right now. What we are going to get into is how to perform these two types of reloads. So the first type of reload we're going to cover is our tactical reload with retention, right? So this is going to be the one where magazine has not run dry yet. You're just doing it more as an administrative action, so you can have a full 30 rounds in the gun, right? So we're going to start this off. We're going to be on target. Our safety's off because we're just engaging targets. And then we decide, you know what, this is a good time for a reload. So we're going to do a couple of things in short order, right? What those things will be is that we're going to come off the trigger, we're going to go on safe, and we're going to get behind cover if we can, right? Because we want to be sure that we're exposing ourselves as little as possible to whoever is shooting at us. So, and when we place our weapon on safe, we reduce the likelihood of this weapon going off and hitting someone or something we don't want it to, right? So, once we've come behind cover, we're then going to do a few things simultaneously. We can even do these as we're coming into cover, right? So the weapon is going to go into our workspace, and as that happens, we're going to be pulling a fresh magazine from our magazine pouch, right? We're going to then place it in an L shape with our old magazine, about like so. It's kind of hard to get a good angle on that, but that way you guys can see, right? So we're going to hold on to the weapon. We're going to hold on to these two magazines just like so to facilitate a quicker reload. We're going to hit our magazine release. We're going to pull that magazine, the old magazine, out of the weapon. We're going to flip our fresh magazine up, and we're going to jam it into the weapon. Now, I'm not going to get into the debate of 28 versus 29 versus 30 rounds in a magazine. That's a talk for a different time. All I'm going to say is that if it has rounds in it, it's going to be harder to insert. So make sure that you're giving it a good smack up in there so that way it actually seats, right? And to make sure that it's actually seated, as we come away with our old magazine, we're going to give it a little bit of a pull, right? That way we can be sure that it is in the magazine well. We'll then we'll put our old magazine back in that pouch, right? And then we're going to bring our weapon back on target, come out from behind cover, and be ready to re-engage, right? So, have a little bit more speed, and once again, explaining that, we'll go over it. Okay, so we're on target, we're firing, decide it's time for our reload, step behind, go on safe, do our L shape, new mag in the pouch, back on target, ready to re-engage, right? That's simple and easy. You can get even faster at it if you're not talking through the steps like I am. Okay, so now that we've covered our tactical reload with retention, we're going to go ahead and we'll cover our emergency or speed reload. So for our emergency or speed reload, we're not going to be retaining the magazine that we dropped, right? Also, our weapon is going to have run dry while we're shooting, right? So we're going to charge the weapon back, put our charging handle forward again so we don't beat the crap out of it while we're practicing this, right? We should have an empty chamber. So, for these, you're going to do them at a pretty good rate of speed because obviously if your weapons run dry, it's bad news in a gunfight. We don't want that to last too long. So, as we're on target, with our weapon off safe, attempting to shoot, we got nothing going on, right? So what we're going to do is a couple things simultaneously once again. Flip the weapon on safe, we're going to drop the magazine. As we're doing that, we're reaching for our fresh mag. We're going to take that fresh mag, we're going to jam it up into the mag well, right? And then press our bolt release, weapon off safe, re-engage the target. Now if you'll notice, I looked at my magazine well there when I did that. And the reason I do that is so that I can make sure that I properly seat the magazine. If I fail to properly seat the magazine while I reload, it can have a tendency to look something like this. Now as you'll notice, it took a couple of extra seconds there in order to get that magazine in place. When you fumble around like that, you cost yourself perhaps extra seconds and potentially your life. If you take that 1 second to just take a look at the magazine well and then get back on target, you're not going to be doing yourself any harm. In fact, you might even get your gun up and running quicker because you took that second to check versus fumbling around with it, potentially dropping your magazine while you were doing your reload and potentially costing you your life. Many instructors advocate for looking straight at the target the entire time. However, until you've become extremely proficient, and even for some people who have become extremely proficient, this increases the likelihood that you're going to fumble that magazine change. And really, in a firefight, that's not an acceptable mistake. Anything that could cost you your life, probably not a good idea to play with. Okay, so now that I've shown you the two different types of reloads that I was going to cover in the video, I'm going to go ahead and give you guys a demonstration of them being done at speed. Alright guys, so that wraps it up for this video on the different kinds of reloads that I was going to cover. Tactical reloads with retention and speed or emergency reloads. I hope this video has been instructional. I noticed there was a bit of a gap as far as YouTube videos out there concerning how to do reloads at speed properly, breaking it down step by step like this. So I figured I'd fill that capability gap. If you guys have any comments or concerns, go ahead, put them down in the comments below. Let me know what you think. And I'll see you next time.